Hello, and how are you, everybody? It's such a wonderful day, and it's such a wonderful opportunity to get to talk with all of you yet once again. You are the electricity that continues to power this channel, and I am constantly in awe of all of you. Just like I am in awe of the one and only Culture Casino joining us for the second time on this channel. It's the Encore!
Hey,
Casino, welcome back.
I'm glad to be here, and I really do appreciate your invitation. I always have a good time with you wherever we are, so it's wonderful to be back again.
That's right. We do have a good time, and I think when we're having a good time, others are having a good time watching that. So let's dive straight in. Before we do, quick reminder, folks, like this if you like it, share, subscribe, that notification bell, click it and stick it to the algorithms, and don't forget the Pro Show. It's starting Thursdays, 5 to 7 p.m. Eastern Time. March 23rd is the debut. And with that, here we go. All right, so Lucasfilm was the recipient of a lawsuit ongoing at this time. We've known about this for a while now. In fact, when it broke, I was commentating on it on Midnight's Edge with you there.
Yeah.
And so this has been around. But the key thing that we're going to do today is there are two parts to this that are worth going back and taking a look at. One of those parts is something that you had, an epiphany that you had while we were in discussions over on Midnight's Edge. And then the other part is something that I was talking with Valiant Renegade about, and we started adding up some numbers, and things just didn't match up, and that led to a little mini epiphany for me. So let's take a look real quick. We'll do a quick refresher. This article from Deadline: Lucasfilm sued for egregious axing of producer Karyn McCarthy from Star Wars series The Acolyte. This by Dominic Patton. March 8th, so we are going back in the Wayback Machine just a little bit, so maybe a little bit way back. And we're going to drop down, actually. We're not going to read all the top parts, although any of you who want to, this is linked in the description, so you can go read it all. We're not hiding anything. And here's the paragraph that we're interested in. Let's zone in on this. When McCarthy went to Lucasfilm and requested to be paid, Lucasfilm denied that they even had an agreement. Okay, there. Key in on that. They disagreed they even had an agreement, even though, one, they had made their offer containing all of the material deal points. We're assuming that's true. We don't know. McCarthy accepted that offer. We don't know how she accepted it. We're assuming that's true, though. Lucasfilm had McCarthy start right away. Now, that's an interesting thing to say because it seems to indicate that McCarthy had already started. So grammatically, is that accurate with that tense? We don't know, but we're assuming that's what's being said there. Lots of assumptions here, but that's what we're going to go on. And then finally, and here's the thing we're going to zoom in on big time. Lucasfilm sent to McCarthy a memorandum of agreement memorializing the terms, including that McCarthy had already commenced working. And here's where things get dicey. In further disregard of McCarthy and the work she had already done, Lucasfilm offered to pay McCarthy $5,000 for a single day's work. Culture, walk us through real quick why that may have been the key to Lucasfilm being opened up to litigation, and then I'm going to tell you why I think that this is just a beautiful case of comeuppance. Go for it.
Well, okay, so as we discussed, and assuming all of the elements here are true in this paragraph, the very moment that Disney offered compensation, which is considered de facto monetary obligation or valuable consideration in different kinds of deals, however you want to talk about it, they immediately established a contract because an offer had been made, an offer had been acceptance, and in exchange, a monetary exchange took place. And immediately, you're confirming we had an agreement. And
Culture, don't forget too, they're establishing a single day's worth of work, right?
Well, they did. If they established a single day's work for her at $5,000 a day, how many days they have opened themselves up to a pretty decent check that they may have to write at the end of this suit. And
that's a great point. $5,000 for a single day. That's a great point because that also establishes what her value is per day. Oh my gosh, that per diem amount. We're going to talk about why this has come up in just a minute, but that's another fantastic point I don't think I've heard anybody make.
Yeah, well, I like you said, we can make the assumptions here that the attorney took this case on and used colorful language in a trade magazine, egregious, right? Because that's from the title of the article or the headline.
Sure.
So, but if an attorney took this on and is able to demonstrate all of those points, which I'm certain there's a record of, probably an electronic record, because that's usually how these kinds of things are done nowadays. They don't do them in person anymore. So there's probably email correspondence back and forth establishing all of these things, including the deal points.
Yep.
You have a contract. They're stuck. In the state of California, and I don't know if we're going to jump into this right away, but in the state of California, you can have this kind of deal be upheld in court. In fact, it was recently done to the tune of, I think,
there's precedents.
Yeah, precedent, exactly. I believe it was $1.9 million in a similar case very recently. And that was one that actually went through the court system. Now, what doesn't normally happen and what doesn't normally get into the public is these lawsuits. You don't usually hear about this stuff. Usually it's dealt with quietly or in another way. Instead of going through the courts, you go to arbitration. And Disney is famous for all of these things. A, not paying people properly. B, ending up in arbitration. And C, ultimately getting sued and then having to, make recompense. So,
well, Culture, let's say this. If Disney is declaring that there was no agreement, despite the fact that they paid Miss McCarthy, then does that nullify her need to go through arbitration, since one party is declaring there's no agreement whatsoever, and therefore there is no arbitrary process?
Interestingly enough, I think the moment compensation was offered, they actually created that binding. So either
I agree with you. Disney seems not to, if the deadline report is adequate and correct.
And again, if this actually processed through Lucasfilm Limited, that's still in California. So
yes,
they're still going to be stuck in California, and the first step usually is arbitration. So the reason I think this suit was filed would be to force arbitration, possibly, because that's what would happen is Disney would be like, okay, look, we're going to take this to arbitration, and again, confirming they have a deal. And if they are outright disputing they have a deal and they allow it to go to court, hello, Discovery, it's a party.
Right, that's right. That's why I don't think we'll ever get to that point.
No.
Now, earlier today, I put out a video discussing how bad things are at Lucasfilm and how bad things are just in general you've got Willow having been canceled after a single season. You've got The Mandalorian. Its audience has been cut in half. The third episode, I think, is just awful. We'll be talking with Lauren Connor soon about how that probably leads into the sequel trilogy and how they didn't take that amount of time in the third episode and make it be a bore snore fest just for the sake of doing it. They're actually trying to build a narrative probably around Rey and Palpatine. But all of this speaks to me two things about Lucasfilm, and that is, one, incompetence, and then two, that they're to some degree, I think, nefarious. And the nefarious part of that, well, the incompetence too, but here's what I think's going on with this lawsuit. And here's how I think that Lucasfilm opened them up to litigation. The deal that I'm looking at here is that the amount they offered her for one day's work is exactly $5,000. Exactly. 000.00. I have no idea how you could come to that number amount unless they just absolutely pulled it out of their butt. Some people have talked about it being perhaps for living expenses, but I've looked at that. I don't think that's true. I don't think, based on the report out of Deadline, that that's what it was for, because they're saying it's for one day's compensation. Now, what's curious about that is that this is a woman who was offered one of the highest paying jobs at Apple, and then the economic opportunity cost that she took was to forego receiving that huge amount of money that she could have taken with Apple, and she went to Lucasfilm, or at least she thought she did, and perhaps the paperwork shows that. And then upon being removed without cause, again, we're having to go off the claim, but if she was released without cause after 2 weeks, then her losses by not taking the Apple position are vast. And Lucasfilm and everybody there would have known that, because she's not this is not a small fry. This is not a lady who is, someone just starting out in the industry. She's at the top. She's a major player. And what I'm thinking here is that Lucasfilm offering her $5,000, that is a pittance of what she would have been owed in the overall contract. And so I can't see any other way for this to play out. And I could be wrong. I'm speculating here, but I can't see any other way for this to play out than for that to have been an insult to her on her way out the door. If she's owed huge sums of money, okay, let's just say it's $500,000 and up. And
Yeah.
she takes all of the, yeah, exactly, probably way more. And she takes all of these steps. She's been, she loses opportunities that are probably far greater than that. We've heard numbers above $1 million.
Oh, yeah.
And then after 2 weeks, she's sent packing. And then she raises a stink, clearly, right? She says, well, I'm owed money here. And if the response from Lucasfilm is $5,000 for a single day, there's no way that's an actual number. Somebody made that up, because otherwise you would have some kind of per diem amount that has, $4,973.65 or something like that. There's no way it came out to be a round number.
Right.
And I think, again, speculation, but I really do think this is true, or else I wouldn't be talking about it. I think Lucasfilm tried to insult this lady on the way out the door. And in doing so, because of those two factors, again, remember, because they're incompetent and because I think they're nefarious, I think that they took the wiffle bat to their own shins in this case. They shot themselves in their own foot and opened themselves up to litigation. Like you said, de facto monetary obligation.
Right.
They demonstrated that, hey, she did work for us.
That's right. Yeah.
So culture, there's some question about this this show going forward. Everything that I'm seeing shows that it actually is taking place. Otherwise, she wouldn't have the opportunity to stand in, I don't think. Can you talk about that just briefly?
Yeah, actually, I think that's also an activator for this case. The minute that we knew that this was headed into filming, or is filming at the moment in the UK, right? The minute that went into action, that was another trigger that, again, she can prove a loss of wages. She can prove her loss in two different ways. Not just, and let's not focus too closely in on what she would have made from this one show, right? Let's focus in on the job she didn't get because she thought she was working for them. So she has
the economic opportunity cost in this situation.
Exactly. And it is huge, especially for her, because the gig at Apple was a long-term gig, quite a bit of money, making her she would have been the highest paid female producer.
And let's say too here, culture, this is important to note. She's not an average person.
Oh, no.
She doesn't accept contracts or negotiate like you or me or anybody listening to this show, unless you're making maybe even 8 figures, because she has a team of very smart people who would be negotiating and accepting the contract on her behalf and all that sort of thing. She has associates who are assisting at every level. The idea that she just went, and signed a contract that wasn't real and all this, I don't buy that. I don't think that happens at this level.
Can I bring something else into this equation, because this has been reported in multiple trades, right? So I believe she's with UTA, right?
Yes.
Okay,
tell everybody what UTA is.
It's a talent agency. See, it's a huge one. It's a big one. It's one of the bigger ones, right? It's not Endeavor, but it's pretty big, and they've been doing things for a long time, and they have their own attorneys and people.
And they get a major cut. They get a major cut from these contracts that their people sign.
Exactly, and she probably has a full management team. So it's not like this was done in a vacuum. Not only that, and this is something I want to add because it was reported in one of the other stories. I think the Hollywood Reporter, possibly Variety, but I've read all of the accounts, and I'll say that she's using UTA's attorneys. UTA's not like handing them over to her, but she's individually using the attorneys that also represent UTA. That tells me something. That attorney sees standing and merit and is going to take it forward. One last thing, and one of the reasons that she may have been shoved out. Can we speculate yet, or do you want to cover something?
Oh, sure, absolutely. Okay. Well, I mean, let's just say this. Let's put the caveats out there. Okay. Neither I nor Culture Casino are accredited attorneys.
Oh.
We have people who assist us and help us in understanding the law, but we're not here to give you legal advice. Please do not construe anything that we're talking about as legal advice. No. And also, when we're entering into speculation throughout this video, please understand that this is subjective opinion. It's free discourse. We're trying to ascertain the truth as best we can, but of course, we're human and we're fallible. Take it away now.
All right, very quickly. So I would suggest that Lucasfilm is currently run by...
I'm not saying that. You're not going to trick me into that one.
Okay, Lucasfilm is currently run by Frank Marshall's wife. How does that?
You know, everybody in the chat now, everybody is going to be leaving a comment about what should have been put in that blank.
Okay,
We're getting demonetized right now.
Okay. I'm not doing it. I will suggest that because this is a known quantity, this woman, right? This producer, she's a known factor. She has standing. She's powerful in her own right. She's well represented. Right. I'm putting a lot of building blocks.
I'm with you. I'm starting to see a parallel here.
And what is this person that runs Lucasfilm potentially going to do in the future?
Well, she's supposed to be, everything I've heard for the last few years, and I cannot corroborate this, but everything I've heard is late 2023 to 2024 that she'd be stepping aside and potentially taking a legacy role.
So if you have a powerful, well-placed, well represented woman that comes in and does a spectacular job on a show inside of Lucasfilm,
who's also lined up to be the top person at Apple, or the top paid female, so she's no slouch.
And she would be what any corporation would consider a catch because she checks a lot of boxes.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if somebody was threatened by not being able to hand pick a successor. I don't know.
Well, I would say that probably is the case. I don't know that to be true, but I can tell you that from the very get-go, everything about this Acolyte project and everything that's been happening at Lucasfilm since about 2016, maybe earlier, stinks to the high heavens to me. I mean, they don't treat their people right. They don't treat their directors right. They don't treat their writers right. They don't treat their fans right. They don't treat their characters right. They don't treat their shows right. I don't know who they treat right, but eventually you would think that karma catches up.
Yeah, I would think so as well. But so I like I said, I would just suggest to enter that into the record as a possibility for maybe why not only did they send her out the door, but they offended her.
Duly noted. Okay. They marched her out of there and made sure that she rode on a horse she didn't deserve.
There you go.
All right, folks, if you like content like this, make sure to click the like button, share, subscribe. Click that notification bell. When you do, you can stick it to the algorithms. When you click it, we covet your comments. We care about what you think. You really do matter, and we respond often to what you say. We certainly take them into account as we pick out new topics. And remember, I am working as hard as I can to keep up with all of the follies of Disney, but the Disney drop is intense. I have never seen a company in this sort of a tailspin, at least in the last 2 weeks, that refuses to course correct. It is impressive. And I'm just doing my best. I will continue to do my best to cover it. Please, though, also consider watching all of those channels in our orbit that are doing a great job covering this content. It's just a lot. Disney is screwing up in so many ways. There are so many fires, and we'll just do our best to cover it all as well as we can. Culture, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
And folks, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, keep learning, keep growing, and keep having fun.